Bitcoin, it has its market cycle, so it usually shows strengths towards the beginning of the bull market, and then towards the end you start to see money flow out into things like Ethereum and other altcoins. So this is what we're looking at. I'm waiting for this chart on Ethereum to sort of have a parabolic uprise, and then we can start to hopefully see more gains in PulseChain. Especially now we have certain wallets I heard bought a bunch of Ethereum, so I don't know what the Ethereum's going to top at, but you could probably do the math on how much money that wallet's going to have, depending on the Ethereum price, and whether or not that money is going to get injected into Pulse Chain is just speculation. But we've seen certain addresses actually bridge over tons of money at certain periods of times, even recently. So
Yeah, let me bring that up real quick too, because I think
yeah, please.
it's good. It's timely to talk about that piece. So this is a post from Storyteller. Shout out to Martin Storyteller 17. What about ETH? If Ethereum does exactly 3.5x its previous top, we should hit a price of 17K. ETH has outperformed Bitcoin ever since its inception, but forget about that for a second. Let's stick to 17K as a top for ETH in this bull run. Sacrifice wallets currently hold 170,518 ETH, which at 17K would be worth $3 billion. Wow. With
It's
a
a lot of
B.
money. Yeah.
That money, that $3 billion. I don't know if I'd like to see a follow up to. I don't know if anyone's ran the numbers of, you always have these conversations around what if those funds were just $1 million a day in a pulse chain, or started out a little bit over time and either incremented or decremented different values strategically and stuff like that. And is it? Yeah, I mean, all this speculation, we have no idea. It may do nothing, but it did seem like there was a trade made and a bet on Ethereum when this happened. So yeah, it's I don't know. Like I guess what are we waiting on as far as, there's different things you can use to watch the wallets and track and look and see what's going on. But 17K, can you, even at 10K, like 10K, 12K, 17K, at least $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion worth of ETH maybe coming to like could go to Pulse Chain, could go anywhere else, but it's the Pulse Chain, the SAC address and all that stuff. So there's a pretty tight correlation there. I don't know. What do you think we'll see in the next 3 6? I mean, it has many SAC movements for a while, none notable that we could see. But what do you think is going on in that space?
So I think it's kind of become a little bit of a meme, but the whole like shake out the weak hands thing, and I think that there is definitely truth to that because let's say you come in with a bunch of money and you decide to buy up a certain asset, like you don't want people like just like extracting value like as soon as they can, as much as they can, as fast as they can. You probably want believers and people who've actually been there through like the mud, through the rain, through the shine, through everything, right? So I think this is partially a part of just like we'll see what happens, right? Like it's all sort of a waiting game. Like if ETH tops out and some of this money flows in, and you still have the believers in Pulse Chain, which those few who are actually going to stick around for that while will probably, if that money gets injected, be rewarded very well. But I know like there's people who potentially have shorter attention spans who won't be able to like they won't be able to focus, or maybe they don't have their conviction, or I think that's one of the biggest things too is like you don't have your conviction set. So by the time maybe ETH tops and money starts to flow into Pulse or PulseX or whatever else Hex, you might have already dumped your bags, right? Going to chase something else that is actually doing maybe green candles in that moment. But I think this is one of the plays where you could. It's a time game, right? Where you're just sort of waiting, and you're just letting the market do its thing, and you'll probably just end up rewarding the believers in the very long run. If something like a bunch of money were to get injected into Pulse Chain, right? So that's sort of how I'm looking at it. But even if you're looking at Richard's projections, like he said 240K Bitcoin. I remember I thought I saw a tweet like that.
Yeah.
Even if you're looking at like that ETH BTC ratio, if that goes back to zero point 0.1, so right now we're below 0.05, so basically just a 2x. Yeah, that's I'll show you guys here. So yeah, if this can go from basically zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.1 up here, basically back to its 2021 highs back here, or 2018 actually. Even if it can make new all-time highs versus 2021, or even get close to 0.88, if you're talking 240,000 Bitcoin and you get anywhere close to this like ratio between like let's say zero point 0.8 to zero point 0.1, you're talking like 200,000, or sorry, 20,000 to $24,000 ETH. So 17K would be great. 20K would be even better. Even something like 8K, 10K would still work. But yeah, I think people are like, maybe they haven't even realized that like there's billions of dollars potentially on the table, and whether or not that like it comes into PulseChain is speculation. But I mean, like there is some sort of track record going, and I think you sort of you want to keep the reputations of your product solid. So we'll see what happens, but definitely one thing I'm watching is this ratio, especially knowing that certain addresses hold a bunch of Ethereum, and that they'll potentially become enriched by just holding ETH, and maybe some of that trickles down into these other assets. So yeah, it's definitely something to pay attention to is the Ethereum price, because it might indirectly affect you someday if you're holding PLS, even through liquidity bonding, right? Like even if let's say a certain entity provides liquidity, between like a lot of liquidity between Pulse and ETH, maybe as the ETH price starts to rocket and shoot up, Pulse just gets dragged up as like liquidity bonding Hart's law. And if you start to see even more and more people FOMO in, maybe there's other catalysts as well that we haven't even talked about, right? Like maybe we don't even know they exist, type of thing. Like I brought up this point before, but looking back, like if you were to try and predict all these sacrifices and all the hype and all these narratives back in like 2020 when Hex came out, or 2019 or 2000, yeah, 2019, you probably wouldn't have been able to do so. Like if you would have had to have been maybe some sort of like crystal ball genius to predict like all the different narratives that like arise. But I think something similar will happen to PulseChain, where like right now we have like sort of, I think the original narrative was like cheaper fees, faster chain, like just better everything pretty much. Like when, especially when ETH was proof of work, like we had proof of stake. It's pretty much just like Ethereum but better. But I wouldn't be surprised if something comes into the future where we start to see new narratives and new catalysts to pump price. I don't know if I'm pretty sure the Richard Hart wallet is still in the works, but I don't know if there's going to be a sacrifice for that one. And I don't know if there is going to be a sacrifice, if there's going to be some sort of incentives for different tokens, like maybe even incentive token for the wallet and stuff like this. But I think Richard's still working. Like I remember listening to a Twitter space from a while back, and he was talking about his maybe it wasn't a Twitter space, but either way, he was talking about his museum and stuff like this. So I still think he's still working on the back end, and who knows what happens with some of these things being built. Like maybe the museum ties into PulseChain somehow and generates hype somehow, right? Who knows? It's pretty, like you can't really predict this sort of stuff, but I think there's gonna be a narrative coming, and we're just gonna have to wait for sort of the bull market to really commence. It's nice now that we've sort of passed the halvening date, so like everything's inching closer and closer and closer every single day. But I think it's just a waiting game, and just like keep your conviction, because I know like especially now with everything sort of being down relative to even 30 days ago or 40 days ago, people are probably freaking out a little bit. So just like keep your conviction, know what's happening, because like even people are fighting the Richard Hart ETH trade and just making fun of it or whatever. But I think like it's long-term plays, right?
It's always so weird, yeah, when I see like people criticize like a trade that was made like a couple months ago or so. It's like what, like there's definitely a time and place to criticize a trade over time, but it hasn't nearly had enough time to get any information of whether that was a good or bad trade. And everyone in the world thinks Ethereum's going higher,